do the books promote religious values?
Well, this is a interesting and somewhat complicated question. I want to first talk about the idea of it being an occult book, because a lot of Christian critics, Catholic and Protestant, have claimed that these books promote sorcery, or Joseph Ratzinger, before he became Pope, said that the books threaten to corrupt the Christian faith. You also have some Christians, some Catholics and Protestants defending the novels, but you have some who are very critical.
Those chick pamphlets? They're the kind you see on the bus. There's some fundamentalist Christian thing. They have had ones about Harry Potter, and it's like, the first your child reads Harry Potter, then they're communing with the devil, like step 2, right?
Well, and there have been I've read articles saying that it's satanic and Rowling is satanic, but to me this is just crazy talk. First of all, there's a clear difference in the novels between the fantasy world. She's not saying the fantasy world is the real world, right?
Right.
She's right. Clearly we have a fantasy world of the fiction, which is not the same thing as the real world of our lives.
Well, she's not, well, for one, she's not claiming to be writing nonfiction.
Right, that's an important distinction. But what's especially crazy about this, right, is every Christian that I've ever met, at least Protestant, reveres C.S. Lewis. But what does he write? He wrote a whole series of fantasy novels, which also have movies based on them. And so it seems just very odd to me to have the same people saying, "Ooh, look how great C.S. Lewis is, and his novels have magic." But that's like symbolic or something.
Right.
But J.K. Rowling's novels have magic, and that's evil and satanic and promoting sorcery. But that said, that's not all the Christian critics, right? Some of them are very much pleased with the novels because they think the novels do promote Christian values. So to me, that's the more sort of interesting discussion. So there's a couple of ways in which they clearly are compatible with Christian ideas. And Rowling has said in her interviews that she is Christian, goes to a Protestant-type church, at least did as of the interview I read, and believes in an immortal soul, though she says it's something she struggles with and wonders about. And in the books, clearly the heroes believe in an immortal soul. So Hermione just flat out tells Ron, look, I could kill you, your body would go away, but your soul would be untouched and survive. And so this is a pretty strong and recurrent theme. And so in that sense, it is religious, in the sense that it allows for and promotes the idea of an immortal soul. The other idea is the idea of Christ-like love, right? So in Christ's final act, he gave himself voluntarily to be crucified, horribly killed on the cross, so that everyone else could have their sins forgiven and go to heaven, is the upshot. So the idea is that there are parallels to that in the Potter novels. Most dramatically, Lily giving her life for Harry, Harry in the end thinking he's going to die, confronting Voldemort to save everybody else around him. And then you might also say Dumbledore allowing himself to be killed for basically Draco's sake.
Right.
Might be a third example, big example of that. And so a guy named John Granger has written a few books about the Potter series, and he's coming at it from a Christian perspective, and he makes this case, though they're very closely connected. But in my book, I argue that neither of those things matter very much thematically to the novels. As far as immortality, yes, the heroes believe that there's an immortal soul. But that doesn't seem to really play a big role in why they're doing what they're doing. And one example of this is Lupin at the end. Sorry, this is a bit spoily, so close your ears if you don't want. But at the end, Lupin dies, after they have a child. But in the image of Lupin, he's able to come back and talk to Harry, and he says, paraphrasing, look, I'm really disappointed I'm not going to get to see my son grow up. but I hope he understands that I gave my life trying to create this world where he could live his life in happiness. Which I guess goes to your point of seeing, in the end, you see his son as what would be Harry's age earlier, right? So you see him as a teen, and you see what he's been able to grow into.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I would say about that is it's not as if... Because if Harry were religious, one attitude he could have, which would be very Christian, is, well, evil is going to reign on this earth and we have to wait until the next life. That is exactly the opposite of... That's the exact opposite of his view. So it seems to me like the Christian defenders of the novels are going to be cherry-picking a couple things so as to get this viewpoint, but they're ignoring a broader context. And, I mean, to the extent that Rowling herself is religious, well... she hasn't done a very good job of creating the Christian worldview or promoting the Christian ethics. I mean, this is not the kinds of values that Harry and Ron and Hermione have, as well as all the minor characters of the Weasleys and all of this. These people are not Christians by go read the Sermon on the Mount and go read Harry Potter and you will see a big difference there.
Right. Plus there's just a basic difference in motivation. For instance, with Lily, she is trying to protect her son. If she could vanquish Voldemort right there, she would. She just doesn't have the ability.
Right.
And it's for her particular somebody she really cares more about than anyone else in the world, save perhaps her husband, right? Which is, in the case of Jesus, he's giving his life for this sort of odd idea of blood sacrifice atoning for sin. And it doesn't matter if he even knows the people or if they're really horrible people, right? It's giving his life for everyone equally, which is not what Lily is doing there.
Right. Right. And I mean, once again, she knows she's going to die regardless, right? This is sort of like Harry's choice in the first book of going through that trapdoor, right? She knows that she's going to die regardless. It's not like she does not have an option in that scenario in which she comes out alive. But she has an option in which she can protect Harry. That's her only choice available to her at that point. And people oftentimes ignore that. They pretend as if she had some choice by which she could, like, run away and be fine, but...
Yeah, I think so. But also, at that point, I mean, her life is so bound up with her child, her only son, Harry, that in a way she doesn't have a choice in that respect, because she has to...
As a matter of integrity.
Right, she has to... Right. It's so important to her, she has to defend him at that point. Right. Do whatever she can, I mean... Right. And that is Harry's example actually shows, look, sometimes, even if a situation seems hopeless, if you put in your best effort, sometimes it's doesn't turn out to be as hopeless as it seems. So I think it's good for us to remember that and remain optimistic in a certain way, because we never know exactly, we're going to go into the situation and die for sure, or live for sure, right? It's always sort of, well, look, my life's on the line here to a greater or lesser extent, and some values are worth it, is I think the case. Should I mention something about Voldemort too?
Sure.
Because it is an interesting contrast. Because one of Voldemort's big motivations is his, I say, pathological, his really severe and irrational fear of death. And so that is a motivation for him, right? He fears dying so much, right, that he creates the Horcruxes and such. So you might be tempted to think, well, the contrary of that, right, is the heroes don't fear death because they believe in an immortal soul. So that's one possible way you could try to interpret it, but I don't think it works, because they're not motivated. It's like they don't act because they don't fear death. They do fear dying, but there are some things that are so important to them that they are willing to put their lives on the line.
Right.
And I think that's the way that makes sense to look at that, given how they actually behave in the novels.
Right. I mean, certainly they do a heck of a lot to avoid death. I mean, the idea that somehow they would be indifferent, that isn't borne out by them.
It's not like they're just, oh, I live or die, it doesn't matter, because I have an immortal soul. That's not it.
They're certainly not trying to be martyrs.
Right. And even if they think that they have an immortal soul, they think that there's something really worthwhile about staying alive here, living with our friends and loved ones, being able to have these loving relationships and, live in this great world.
Right.
So clearly that's a big part of it.